Disney's approach to Star Wars feels like a bad business model. Imagine Coca-Cola releasing a new flavor that everyone dislikes, but instead of listening to the feedback and adjusting the formula, they double down, insisting that customers should just learn to love it, whether they like it or not. It's not the customer who decides what they like for themselves, but the corporate entity telling them what they should like or not. Well, that's a losing business formula, and sadly, that's exactly what's happening with Star Wars right now. Enter Skeleton Crew, the latest in a series of head-scratching projects. How did we end up here? In a galaxy filled with legendary characters, epic tales, and more content potential than a Jabba the Hutt buffet table, why is Disney giving us this? Skeleton Crew is centered around a group of kids who somehow get lost in space, with Jude Law playing their mysterious Jedi guide. You know, because if there's one thing Star Wars has been missing, it's a space-based daycare. I'm exaggerating a bit, but is this what fans have been asking for? Have there been petitions floating around social media demanding a show about lost kids in space? We could be getting shows and movies about legendary characters like Thrawn or Luke Skywalker, but instead we end up with a series that's basically the Goonies in space? Oh, wait, that's literally how Kathleen Kennedy refers to it, something the Goonie fans will enjoy, because Star Wars and Goonies fans have been known to do nothing but overlap on the Venn diagram. And really, that's the point of confusion here. Why this? Why now? Disney's approach to Star Wars since acquiring the franchise has exposed a clear lack of long-term vision. Rather than crafting a cohesive narrative or respecting fan expectations, they seem focused on churning out content, often at the expense of meaningful storytelling. Let's look at the timeline. After acquiring Star Wars, Disney understandably started with episodes 7, 8, and 9. It made sense to continue the Skywalker saga, and while those films were divisive or plain bad, at least they had a clear purpose. Rogue One was another strong addition, offering a gritty prequel to A New Hope and delivering a story that deepened the universe while respecting its lore. But then came Solo, and this is where things start to unravel. Solo wasn't a disaster, but it left many fans puzzled. Who was asking for an origin story about Han Solo's dice? Was there really the burning question in the Star Wars universe? Han Solo worked because he was a charming rogue with a mysterious past. Nobody needs to know the intricate details of how he became who he was. By over-explaining his character, Disney stripped away some of that mystique. And this wasn't a one-off. It marked the beginning of a trend of creating content that nobody was really asking for. This same lack of vision can be seen in the more recent projects. Take The Mandalorian, for example. While it became a breakout hit, it was a gamble at first. It started as a side story in a universe far removed from the Skywalker saga, but it worked. Largely because it managed to tap into the core elements of Star Wars: exploration, adventure, and a sense of mystery. However, Disney's success with The Mandalorian seems more like an accident than a strategic decision, because what followed showed how scattered the overall strategy really is. Now, you'll be saying, but Stickman Anakin, they made the Boba Fett and Kenobi show. These are also shows fan asked for, right? Well, yes, that's true. However, execution is key, and also reading the room as to what the expectations towards a Boba Fett series were exactly. The expectations were a gritty, action-packed story about his days as a feared bounty hunter. Instead, we got a Boba Fett as the mayor of Mos Espa? Negotiating with local crime lords and spending more time making peace deals than being the ruthless enforcer he was supposed to be. This wasn't the Boba Fett fans had idolized for years. The decision to neuter one of Star Wars' most feared characters again shows Disney's misunderstanding of what fans actually wanted from this series. Then there's Obi-Wan Kenobi, a project that had massive potential. Fans had long dreamt of a character-driven series about Obi-Wan's exile on Tatooine, his internal conflict, guilt over Anakin's fall, and his quiet watch over Luke. Instead, the show's pacing felt off. It focused on side characters like Reva, and gave us subplots like rescuing young Leia that felt disconnected from what fans were actually hoping for. Once again, the show failed to fully explore the depth of a beloved character, instead opting for tangential storylines that didn't resonate with the audience. And Andor, while well written and well acted, was yet another confusing choice. It's a solid show, no doubt, but in a galaxy filled with iconic characters and epic stories, was Cassian Andor really the focus fans were waiting for? Add to Andor the series Ahsoka and the Acolyte, it really shows that seem random and don't really connect at all. And we're left with a scattered collection of projects that don't seem to fit into any coherent long-term vision. Ahsoka is a fine series for those who have followed her animated journey, but did we really need more of her after she's had so much screen time in recent years? At this point, she's almost become the face of Disney's Star Wars. And the Acolyte, a project set in the High Republic era, gave us the gayest Star Wars ever instead. That's how they referred to it, I'm just quoting it. So now, Skeleton Crew, the latest head-scratcher. Why a show about kids lost in space? This trend highlights Disney's lack of long-term planning with Star Wars. The problem isn't that they're trying new things, it's that they're doing so without understanding what the fanbase wants. Instead of crafting a unified story across their projects, they're throwing content at the wall to see what sticks, often with little regard for whether it fits into the larger narrative or whether it's something fans even care about. There's simply no plan behind it. It's clear that Disney is completely out of touch with what Star Wars fans actually want. I think in general they're ignorant towards who their target audience actually is. I know it's not a huge sample size, but for the short existence of this channel, the people watching this video are 95% male, mostly around the age 18 to 35 and up. So why do they feel like they need to cater towards an audience of female and woke Star Wars fans that make up a minority of the fan base? Like, they have access to one of the richest fictional universes ever created, and yet they keep delivering content that feels detached, catering towards an audience that doesn't even watch Star Wars to begin with, but just sees it as a tool to further their personal agenda. I'm in business school, and one of the first things they hammer into your head is make products that your target audience wants. If your product doesn't resonate, niche down even more until you find people that like your product. Seems obvious, right? If you fail to give your audience what they want, they're not going to use that product. But somehow, Disney doesn't seem to understand this fundamental concept of product demand. It's baffling that Disney has so much fan feedback at their fingertips, social media, forums, conventions, and yet they seem to actively ignore it. Yeah, most corporations don't listen to what fans want, but it's just really diluting how great their motives could be. An example of company that does listen to fans, LEGO. There has always been a demand from the LEGO Star Wars community that LEGO should make more Clone Trooper LEGO minifigure sets. One day, a genius at LEGO went, "Hey, let's actually listen to what a majority of the LEGO Star Wars fandom seems to be wanting, which is LEGO clone minifigures." They did it, and they were one of the best-selling sets they've made, with LEGO fans buying hundreds of these small figure packs to build their own army. Of course, their execution had some flaws, notable by how weird the figures look with these helmet holes, but still, they listened to what fans wanted and delivered on it. And they keep on doing it, and people keep on buying their products all the more. This is reflected in their revenue, which is rising continuously every year. Now, the same concept applies for general Star Wars fans who are not shy about sharing their thoughts, and we've been pretty clear about what we want. When the Book of Boba Fett flopped, the feedback was loud and clear. This isn't the Boba Fett we were expecting. When Obi-Wan Kenobi focused too much on side characters like Reva, fans voiced their disappointment. We should focus more on Kenobi, not the side characters. But instead of adjusting course, Disney just keeps pushing forward with projects like Acolyte or Skeleton Crew, content that feels disconnected from the richness and complexity of the Star Wars universe. It's not that Star Wars fans are opposed to new ideas, far from it. Most of us love fresh stories, as long as they're treated with the same care and attention to detail as the original trilogy, or the stronger parts of the prequels. The issue with something like Skeleton Crew isn't that it exists, it's that it feels like yet another project that shows Disney has been consistently missing the mark on fan expectations. There's no clear connection to what fans are actually asking for, and this has been happening for years. Some people might argue, well, you didn't know you wanted the original Star Wars either when it came out, so why not let them try new things? Sure, trying something new is great, but there's a difference between bold, creative risks and projects that feel aimless. The key difference is execution, If a new idea is done well, fans can embrace things they didn't even know they wanted. However, if a project fails, especially when it wasn't in demand, it's judged more harshly. People didn't want it in the first place, and now they have proof that it didn't work. Take Morbius, for example. Literally nobody was asking for that movie, but Sony made it anyway. It was a bold move, sure, but the execution was terrible. As a result, the movie has become a joke, and any boldness behind the decision to make it is overshadowed by how poorly it was received. The creators didn't set out to make a bad movie, but when you deliver something that doesn't resonate with the audience, it reinforces the belief that it was a mistake to begin with. The same principle applies to Star Wars. It's not that we shouldn't try new stories in the galaxy far, far away. It's that those stories need to connect with the target audience and be executed well. If a new Star Wars project resonates, fans will naturally embrace and praise it. But when it misses the mark, like most recent projects, fans will tune out, and the franchise risks losing its momentum. Ultimately, what fans want right now is for Disney to get back on track. The franchise has been throwing out ideas without hitting the dartboard, and the results are showing. If Disney refocuses on what fans actually want, whether that's diving deeper into iconic characters or adapting beloved stories, making these with care and focusing on great storytelling, they could bring back the magic that made Star Wars special in the first place. It's almost painful how many missed opportunities Disney has left on the table. The expanded universe is filled with incredible stories, characters, and lore that could be adapted into television or film very easily. For decades, books, comics, and games have expanded the Star Wars galaxy, diving deep into the history of the Jedi, the Sith, and every corner of the galaxy we only glimpsed in the films. Basically keeping the franchise alive for decades without any movies or shows coming from George Lucas. Characters like Grand Admiral Thrawn, Mara Jade, and Darth Revan have become fan favorites. And these characters prove that there's a hunger for stories outside the Skywalker saga. However, that is mainly due to the fact that these stories were written with a lot of care, respecting the Star Wars continuity and expanding on the lore in a meaningful way. Disney could capitalize on this wealth of material by simply sticking to the scripts that already exist, and people would eagerly watch it. A big miss, in my opinion, is the lack of a Darth Vader-centric series. And I'm not talking about a cameo or as a side appearance, I'm talking about a full-on, deep-dive series into the life of Darth Vader between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. Fans have been clamoring for this for years. We've seen glimpses of this era in the comics, and it's fascinating. Imagine a series where we follow Vader as he hunts down the remaining Jedi, grapples with the memories of his time as Anakin Skywalker, and fully transforms into the menacing enforcer of the Empire. There's a book called Lords of the Sith by Paul Kemp that follows Vader and Palpatine to a mission on Ryloth, where their ship is shot down, and there are Twi'lek rebels hunting them down trying to kill them. If they would literally just adapt that book, word for word, into a movie, they will have made an insanely good movie. And we know Disney are no stranger to doing that, considering all the live-action adaptations of their Disney classics. But it's not just Vader, there's a lot more content to explore in just milk. The Old Republic is another era that's been begging for live-action treatment. This is one of the most beloved periods in Star Wars lore, filled with grand battles between Jedi and Sith, rich political intrigue, and characters like Darth Revan, who could carry an entire saga on their own. The Knights of the Old Republic video game are some of the most popular Star Wars stories ever told, and fans have been hoping for years that Disney would bring this era to the screen. Again, just a word for word, adapt the KOTOR game into a series. I'm almost certain it would be widely watched, being the first live-action adaptation of this timeline. It could be that easy. Where does this leave Star Wars? Right now, Disney seems to be coasting on the franchise's legacy, pumping out random shows that don't add much to the universe. The cracks are showing. Between the poorly received sequels and lackluster shows, more fans are voicing dissatisfaction. If Disney continues ignoring what the audience really wants, Star Wars risks losing its appeal. Disney needs a course correction fast. The franchise has endured because of strong storytelling, beloved characters, and fan respect. But if surface-level content remains the focus, it will burn out. Some fans are even suggesting that Disney should sell the Star Wars franchise and someone with a deeper connection to the lore should take over. To be honest, I'm a huge critic of Disney's handling of Star Wars. However, they do offer the resources to make something great out of it once again. It just requires someone at the lead who puts the emphasis back on making great stories instead of pushing dumb agendas and recruiting bad writers. Whether that's George Lucas returning as an advisor or another creative visionary stepping in, change is needed and fast. Marvel has recently changed course on their newest Avengers film by bringing Robert Downey Jr. back. Not that that's the greatest thing ever, but still, at least they seem to be reacting to the backlash. But for Star Wars, nothing. To end the video, until Disney starts listening to the fans, we'll be stuck watching shows like Skeleton Crew, waiting for the day when Star Wars finally returns to the galaxy we know and love, and I might eat my words when it comes out and suddenly saves the Star Wars franchise, but I'm 99.99% certain Skeleton Crew ain't gonna be the savior. May the Force be with us. We'll need it.